Canadians feel angry and betrayed and anxious after the President's unprovoked attacks on our sovereignty. We're left wondering how we can end the paralyzing uncertainty and what the future holds. We don't know what today's tariff announcement will bring, how long they will last, or what they will do. But whatever President Trump does, a bunch of things remain undeniably true. One, these tariffs are unjustified. Two, they will hurt people and businesses on both sides of the border. And three, Canada will obviously never be the 51st state. But we need a plan going forward, a plan that is both strong and effective. And I want to break that down into three parts. Obviously, one, we need an immediate response. Two, we need to tackle the dispute after the election, hopefully to bring it to an end. But three, perhaps most important of all, we need a long-term plan to build our economic fortress in Canada so we are never vulnerable to these kinds of threats again. First, our immediate response must be targeted reciprocal tariffs, targeted narrowly at those American goods we don't need, can make ourselves, or buy elsewhere to maximize impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on ourselves. Secondly, we must be prepared to protect jobs. Keeping Canadians working should be our top priority. And that's why we need to focus on maintaining the link. If a worker loses his job, it's much harder, longer, and actually more expensive for the government to try and get him back into employment than it is to try and keep him working in the interim period while this dispute is on. The Conservative government, if elected at the end of this month, will launch a Keeping Canadians Working Fund, a targeted temporary loan program for businesses that are directly hit, helping them keep workers on the job. Very similar to the type of program that John Baird initiated when we were in the Harper government during the great global recession. Binding people to their jobs, keeping their paychecks going while we can get through this trade dispute will help keep the horizon bright and keep our economy stable. But where do we go from there? The second part of the plan is we have to try to end this trade dispute. There's no guarantee, but we have to try. On day one, as Prime Minister, I will propose to the President to accelerate renegotiations of CUSMA, bringing in a new deal on trade and security. CUSMA must be renegotiated anyway, next year. Why wait? Why not get it done now? Why not end the uncertainty that is paralyzing both sides of the border and that is also costing us jobs today? We should set a firm date to finalize a new deal. And I will propose that both countries pause tariffs while we hammer out that deal. Keeping destructive tariffs in place kills jobs on both sides of the border and so serves no purpose at all. It does not make sense to go on killing jobs, disrupting markets, and weakening both our economies with on-again, off-again tariffs for months on end as Canadian businesses and workers live in paralyzed terror. In the meantime, during negotiations, suspension of tariffs would have to go both ways. Either they take them off or we would not. We would require this to be fully reciprocal as we work towards getting a deal. And as for the deal itself, any good negotiator would tell you that he wouldn't put his cards on the table before sitting down to talk. But Canadians do have a right to know what our red lines are. As I said, Canadians have the right to know what red lines I will draw in order to protect our country in these inevitable negotiations that any future Prime Minister will have and have quickly. So let me be clear. First, I will protect our control over our border, our security, our resources, our farmers, including our supply-managed farmers, our fresh water, our automotive workers. Also, we will protect our sovereignty our laws, our currency, our dollar, our land, our waters, our sky, our culture, our official languages, and our resources and Indigenous rights will not be under the control of any other country. This is non-negotiable. We will protect Canada's sovereignty in any negotiations. Second, for years, the Americans have demanded we do more on defense. But the truth is, Canadians have been demanding exactly the same thing. And so I will commit that any extra revenue generated from expanded trade with the United States will go right into our armed forces. We will hit our 2%. We will take back control of our Arctic waters from the Chinese and the Russians. We will rebuild our military and will become a truly sovereign nation with a strong armed forces that can protect us. We will not do this to please President Trump. We will do it because it is right for Canada, especially in light of America's growing ambivalence towards NATO. It is important for Canada to step up and show its strength. Canada will carry its own weight. We will secure the North. We will put more boots on the ground, submarines and ships in the sea, and planes in the air. Americans will be able to sleep sound at night, knowing that we fully defend our North. It will also allow us to improve NORAD, to deter, detect, and destroy incoming threats to our shared security. Third, while we will agree to work with the Americans to secure our border on fentanyl and illegal migration, I'll also demand that they do their part to stop sending illegal guns across our border that kill our people. Now, how do we ensure that President Trump keeps his side of the bargain? How can we trust that he'll honor any new agreement when, let's be honest, he violated the last one, the one he negotiated? Well, that's the situation we're now in. We must make sure that the next deal has commitments that we make on defense, border cooperation, and market access that we can withdraw if and when he decides to break the deal and tariff us again. We will hold up our end of the bargain only as long as he holds up his. That is how we create the leverage to protect against a president suddenly changing his mind and breaking his word. Well, we can't control what the president does. My father isn't a particularly religious man, but he did teach me the serenity prayer. God help me to accept the things I cannot change, change the things I can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And we know that we can't control the decisions the president makes, but we know we can control the decisions we make about our own destiny here at home. The president will have a fork in the road. Either he'll continue to hold the threat of tariffs over our heads for the next 3.5 years, or we'll secure a deal that provides permanent relief to our economies, now paralyzed by uncertainty. We don't know which way he'll go, so Canada must be prepared either way. A renewed trade deal with the Americans would be ideal, but it's not the entire solution to our economy. A credible plan to deal with Trump must prepare Canada for growth with or without reliable trade with the Americans. Unfortunately, after the lost Liberal decade, we are in an unprecedented position of weakness. Our economy is stagnant. Our workers are poorer. Our industry has been left exposed to President Trump's threats. And let's be clear about this. We have had the single worst growth of any country in the G7 over the last Liberal decade. The worst part of that growth happened while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. In fact, our per capita GDP is smaller than it was 5 years ago, while the American per capita GDP has grown by 18%. We are projected to have the slowest growth of all of the nearly 40 OECD nations, and that is after 10 years of the Liberals in power. In the first 14 years of this century, Canada had a net investment of American dollars in Canada of about $30 to $100 billion, depending on the year. Right now, after the last Liberal decade, there are $500 billion more Canadian dollars invested in America than the reverse. $500 billion has poured out of our economy into the U.S. We are more dependent and helpless than ever before, precisely because of the policies that Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau have imposed in this lost decade. At this pivotal moment, I think Canadians have to ask a question. Why is Donald Trump so supportive of Mark Carney? Why has Trump anointed Carney the winner of the next election? Do you think it's because Trump has Canada's best interest at heart when he says that he'd rather negotiate with a Liberal government? Or is he thinking about what he can get at Canada's expense? Here's what I think. Donald Trump knows that a fourth Liberal term under Mark Carney will make Canada even weaker and poorer than it was over the last decade, more dependent on American markets and vulnerable to his threats. He knows Mr. Carney is opposed to turning Canada into an energy superpower. He knows that Liberal agenda blocking energy production and pipeline construction will keep Donald Trump's thumb over our economy. In fact, Mr. Carney actually said, and I'm quoting here, more than 80% of current fossil fuel reserves would need to stay in the ground. Now, obviously, he means Canadian oil reserves. There would be more oil produced south of the border, profiting the Americans and making us weaker and more reliant. Trump knows that Mr. Carney will keep Justin Trudeau's industrial carbon tax on Canadian industry, as well as Trudeau's cap on Canadian energy, driving business south. And just yesterday, Mark Carney gave a wonderful gift to Donald Trump. He announced he will keep the Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69 in place. Bill C-69 guarantees there will never again be a pipeline, LNG plant, large-scale mine, or nuclear project built in this country. It will send hundreds of billions of dollars fleeing south of the border to Trump's America and force us to continue to sell our oil and gas at massive price discounts. When you consider that Mark Carney's Keep It in the Ground agenda will make us even more dependent on the United States, it becomes pretty clear why Trump wants the Liberals to win a fourth term. The last thing that President Trump wants is a strong Canadian Prime Minister who will turn this country around, turning our country into an economic and resource powerhouse with competitive taxes that is open for business. That might not be good for President Trump, but it is exactly how you put Canada first. The choice in the next election is clear. After the lost Liberal decade, can we afford a fourth term of rising costs and crime and falling economy under America's thumb? Or is it time for a change with a new Conservative government that will put Canada first, a government that will unleash our resources, cut taxes for our workers, bring home our jobs, and stand up to the Americans from a position of strength? That's the decision. That's the decision. And that part we do control. Only we control our natural resources, our tax policy, our competitiveness, and whether Canadians keep more of what they earn and save. The story of Canada is a story of doing big things, of ambitious projects that bind the nation together, uniting us as a people and securing our sovereignty. That's what Brian Mulroney did when he negotiated free trade. That's what John A. Macdonald did with the railway. Canada was not handed to our ancestors. They had to work and sacrifice for it. And whether we were born here or chose to come, we are their heirs. And we have a duty to defend what our ancestors gave us, to build an even better Canada to leave to our children. That is our purpose. That is what we will do. We need our country to think big again. It's time to challenge ourselves, because decline is a choice, but it's not my choice. I choose to build I choose to grow. I choose to meet the moment with ambition worthy of the men and women who built this great country. My plan for the Canadian economy could not be more different than what you've seen over the lost Liberal decade of Carney and Trudeau. I've spent the first week of this campaign setting out ambitious and detailed plans to build our economy so we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up against foreign threats. It's everything we should have been doing for the last 10 years, everything I said we should do over the last 10 years, and everything that Mark Carney has explicitly opposed over the last 10 years. In the first week of this campaign, I've laid out clear and detailed plans to relaunch our economy and take back control of our economic destiny. I've announced that we will cut income taxes by 15% to reward hard work and give our people a chance to get ahead. I've announced the Canada First reinvestment tax cut. Zero capital gains tax when you reinvest the proceeds building Canada right here at home. Think about this. Think about this right now. There is currently no incentive, if you sell an investment today, to reinvest it in Canada. You pay the same capital gains tax if you reinvest here versus sending it abroad. And in fact, because the taxes on your later investment are lower abroad, the business taxes and other taxes, there is a perverse incentive to ship money away. And that's why so much investment has left. Then there's the lock-in effect. Countless people hold on to tired old assets that they'd love to dispose of, but would face a walloping tax bill. So instead of disposing of it to someone who can do something better with it and using the proceeds to build new homes, launch a new factory, buy a new CNC